was the second time in 7 years. The first visit was days after the war in Sri Lanka ended in 2009 and the second after the regime change in Sri Lanka in early 2015. A warm welcome for UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon at the Katunayake International Airport, received by the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs in Sri Lanka, Dr. Harsha De Silva. The Secretary General, who has been critical of Sri Lanka since the war ended in the island nation, inked his thoughts on the guest book allocated only for VVIPs visiting the country. Just hours after his arrival, the UN Secretary General was received by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe at his official residence. The duo held bilateral talks on the commitments made by the government at the United Nations Human Rights Council sessions in Geneva last September. The government co-sponsored the US-backed resolution on Sri Lanka as a first step to strengthen relations between the UN and the country, which was tarnished during the time of the previous regime. Showing the United Nations' commitment towards the youth and the need to empower them based on the core principles of the global body, the UN Secretary General attended an event titled Reconciliation and Coexistence, Role of Youth in the South of Sri Lanka. After engaging with the youth, the UN Secretary General signed a pledge which read, "I pledge for shared prosperity, peace and partnership." The event was organized by the National Youth Services Council together with the Ministry of National Policies and Economic Affairs, the Office for National Unity and Reconciliation and the United Nations in Sri Lanka.
There are 73 million young people who are out of jobs. This is one of the serious global problems now. This not a single country can solve the problem. The United Nations is taking such a serious attention on your future. It recognizes the role of young people as peace builders and agents of change who can break down barriers and reach across cultural divides. Sri Lanka has emerged as one of the biggest contributions to the youth agenda. Sri Lanka is a part of this world, and this world is very small, interconnected. We have only one planet Earth, so you have to work for your country and you have to work for this world.
The Secretary General met with President Maithripala Sirisena at the President's house in Colombo. The meeting was cordial and was focused on ongoing development programs and the progress of the programs being implemented to strengthen reconciliation. According to the Presidential Media Unit, President Sirisena had briefed the visiting UN Secretary General about the steps taken by the government with regard to the constitutional reforms, devolution and structural reforms, and noted he is looking forward to attend the UN General Assembly later this month.
The discussions we held lasted over an hour. The Secretary General and I spoke alone for nearly 10 to 12 minutes. He completely understands the work that is being carried out by the current government. During both the official and private discussions with Ban Ki-moon, I explained to him the various measures I implemented during my 1.5 years in office as President on the subjects of democracy, freedom, human rights and fundamental rights. I also elaborated on the Judiciary, the Bribery Commission that is curbing fraud and corruption, and the Human Rights Commission, and that these institutions have commenced a very successful journey, and I asked him to give me time to continue this journey slowly. I very clearly explained to him and requested that he gives me time to solve the issues that exist at present and to create a good country, a peaceful country, and to strengthen reconciliation. With a smile on his face, the Secretary General told me that there will not be any intervention and to continue the work that is being carried out in a calm manner. The Secretary General did not give us any deadlines or time limits to finish this work. He did not say that we need to implement any new rules or regulations or establish any new institutions. I'm speaking to you in this manner while the Secretary General is still in the country. That is why this is a very good news for us.
Ketingay kanisa, itaktuya ita subawa ditaktuya.
The Secretary General addressed Colombo-based diplomats, state officials and media personnel at the Sustainable Development Goals Seminar held in Colombo. The Sustainable Development Goals, officially known as Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, is a set of 17 aspirational global goals with 169 targets between them. Spearheaded by the United Nations through a deliberative process involving its 193 member states as well as global civil society. The goals are contained in paragraph 54 United Nations Resolution of 25th September 2015. The resolution is a broader intergovernmental agreement that, while acting as the post-2015 development agenda, builds on the principles agreed upon under resolution, popularly known as the Future We Want. The SDGs were in large measure informed by the oft-quoted assertion by the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon that there can be no Plan B because there is no Planet B. Addressing the event in Colombo, the UN Secretary General said that the UN has made mistakes in Sri Lanka.
During the critically important last several months, we made the big mistakes. We learned the very hard lessons on the part of the United Nations. I established internal investigations into what had happened, what our people of the United Nations mission here had been doing at that time. We found a serious mistake, inactivities. Had we been more actively engaged, we could have saved many more human lives.
Dropping a bombshell, the SG also compared the conflict in Sri Lanka to that of Rwanda, where genocide took place.
I again commend Sri Lanka for examining the difficult period you have now begun to leave behind. I'm sure these efforts will continue to generate important lessons for the international community that can save many lives in many places. If I may continue again, something happened during my time as a Secretary General, like this one, Sri Lanka. But something more terrible, serious happened in the past. In 1994, in Rwanda, there was a massacre. More than 1 million people were massacred. United Nations felt responsible for that. Of course, it was their war and massacres, but United Nations was not able to actively join it. We committed that should never occur, never again. We said, repeated, never again, never again. It happened just 1 year after in Srebrenica. Again, many people were massacred when they were not fully protected by the United Nations peacekeeping operations. So we repeated again, never again. Now, how many times we should repeat never, never again? We did again in Sri Lanka. We have to do much more, not to repeat that kind of things in Sri Lanka, Yemen, and elsewhere.
7 years after, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon visited Jaffna in the northern province, which the war wreaked havoc for 3 decades. During his brief visit, the UN Secretary General met with the governor of the province. A group of relatives of missing persons held a demonstration opposite the governor's office, where the meeting was held, and handed a petition over to a representative of the UN Secretary General. The group demanded that the UN do more in Sri Lanka and exert pressure on the government to bring back home their loved ones. Ban Ki-moon met with opposition leader R. Sambandhan, Northern Province Chief Minister C.V. Vigneswaran and other representatives of the Tamil National Alliance at the premises of the Jaffna Library. A demonstration was held there as well by relatives of missing persons and family members of those who have been arrested under the Prevention of Terrorism Act in the country. After the meeting, the opposition leader attempted to meet with the demonstrators. However, there was a strong objection. Subsequently, the UN Secretary General met with the people who have been relocated at resettlement villages. Just hours prior to the departure, a media briefing took place.
In a speech he made this morning that the United Nations has made certain shortcomings in terms of Sri Lanka. So given this backdrop, Secretary General, how can you make an assurance to the Sri Lankan government and Sri Lankans that you can succeed in the future in terms of Sri Lanka?
United Nations and Sri Lankan government have been discussing and consulting on all other matters since a long time. There were mutual efforts, but all these aspirations and concerns and also mechanisms have not materialized until recently. In that regard, I commend President Sirisena. Since his inauguration, he has been taking bold actions. I count on the leadership of this country to fully cooperate and show their leadership. It may take longer time than one may expect, but that does not mean that you have to take as long as you want. The victims and families who have been affected, they cannot wait forever. The sooner you address this, the better.
I want to know, Secretary General, especially given the United Nations role during the Iraq War and you know what's happening in Israel and Palestine now, how do you address this issue, the cry that the UN has used a double standard when judging Sri Lanka?
I would not agree that there has been or there is a double standard on the part of the United Nations. We really wanted to see why it had happened to that level. What and how United Nations could have done better in Sri Lanka.
In 2012, Newsfirst became the first Sri Lankan-based electronic media organization to interview the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, 3 years after the conflict ended, and this is what the Secretary General had to say on Sri Lanka. Mr. Secretary General, you visited Sri Lanka following the end of the conflict in May 2009. It's been 3 years following the end of the conflict in Sri Lanka now. What are your observations now on Sri Lanka?
I'm encouraged that the Sri Lankan government has been trying to promote the reconciliation among the peoples and try to overcome this aftermath of very difficult period. At the same time, I've been urging President Rajapaksa and Foreign Minister to do more because there are very important recommendations which was made by the lessons learned and national reconciliation. All these recommendations should be implemented without further delay. This is the expectation of the international community. Now, as President Rajapaksa was re-elected, he has a strong mandate. It's high time for him to exercise his political leadership to promote further the national reconciliation. And I'm encouraged that most of the internally displaced people have been able to be resettled in their own home country, home state or provinces. But again, how to provide the necessary assistance to them will be a key priority for them.
Human rights and accountability were two areas that the UN had focused its attention on following the end of the conflict in Sri Lanka, Mr. Secretary General. Even you appointed a commission in this regard following the end of the conflict. Where do you position human rights and accountability in terms of Sri Lanka right now?
We hope that the government of Sri Lanka will focus more in further promoting and protecting the human rights of all. There is clearly issues emanating from the minority groups, Tamil, their grievances and complaints, their well-being should be well addressed. I have been urging President Rajapaksa and all high-level authorities of Sri Lankan government that without addressing these issues, without properly protecting the human rights of minority groups, particularly Tamil and the women and the girls, marginalized group of people, you cannot say that Sri Lanka will be able to live in a harmonious country.
Mr. Secretary General, do you see commitment from the part of the Sri Lankan government to ensure human rights and accountability in the country?
That's what I have been assured by the President Rajapaksa and the ministers, but at the same time they should also know that there is a higher expectation from the international community. The Sri Lankan government has gone through this universal periodic review by the Human Rights Council, and there was a resolution adopted by this Human Rights Council. All the elements of this Human Rights Council resolution and the recommendations by the Human Rights Council through universal periodic review should be implemented without any delay.
Mr. Secretary General, do you think Sri Lanka is being singled out as far as human rights and accountability issues are concerned? Why not discuss about the issues that took place in Libya, Iraq and even Afghanistan?
Human rights is a universal right. It's not that Sri Lanka is only singled out. I don't think any country in the world has been singled out because there have been complaints and there have been abuses of human rights in the course of the war, fighting against the terrorist groups. Everybody's human rights and dignity should be promoted.
Mr. Secretary General, you were appointed as Secretary General of the United Nations a few years back. Your first term in office was supported by many Asian countries. Do you think that you have been able to fulfill your role as a Secretary General to the Asian continent?
Asian countries, Asian continent are now making a great strides in terms of political stability, economic development, and also in the area of human rights. Of course, around the world there are many places still we see problems. Sri Lanka, as you are emerging from all these conflicts during the last 3 decades, now it's a high time to establish firmly the rule of law principles and principles of human rights and human dignity, and ensure political stability. That's what I expect as a Secretary General, and I will continue to work with the leadership of your government.
Mr. Secretary General, since you took office a few years back, there have been many criticism leveled by many state leaders on the credibility of the United Nations. And even during the 6-7 sessions of the United Nations General Assembly, many countries urged the United Nations body to reform the UN and even the Security Council for that matter. But you have been very silent on these subjects. I want to know, what is the position of the Secretary General, you, in reforming the Security Council and even the United Nations?
When it comes to United Nations, I have been quite determinedly pushing this to make the organization more efficient and effective and accountable and transparent. You will see how United Nations has changed. When it comes to institutional reforms like Security Council reform, it has been long overdue, and there is almost a unanimous wish that the Security Council should be changed a more representative, more democratic and more transparent way, reflecting the changes during the last 6 decades. It's up to the member states to accelerate this reform process of Security Council. When it comes to change management, I'm continuing to make this organization much more reformed.
Mr. Secretary General, one of the allegations leveled by the developing world is the fact that the UN is adopting or having a different policy towards the developed world and the developing world. You're the Secretary General. What are your views on this?
My priority is to have a sustainable development, whether you are coming from developing or developed world. We need to be able to have a sustainable development in terms of in the area of economic, social and environmental. That's our top priority. And our priority is focused on how we provide such a support to most of the developing world, particularly vulnerable countries and the small island developing countries, landlocked least developed world. Without addressing the challenges of those developing worlds, we cannot claim that we are living in a sustainable world in terms of politics and economic and social and environmental areas.
Mr. Secretary General, my final question to you is, what is the way forward for Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka should continue to promote further in terms of national reconciliation and promote further to enhance the human rights and human dignity of people. That's the way Sri Lanka should go ahead to become much more respectable and responsible members of the international community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you.